Hi and welcome to Peacemag TV. In today's WordPress video, we're going to be taking a look at how we install a complete installation of WordPress. We're going to take a look at setting up the server. We're going to take a look at installing WordPress itself, configure the database, upload the relevant plugins, install a commercial theme, and then we're going to take a look finally at creating a professional looking website based around our commercial theme of choice. So let's take a look at how we can do that now. So the first thing we're going to do is create the database, set up the user, and apply the permissions. So I'm in the control panel or the C panel for my hosting account, and as you can see, I've got the option for my SQL databases. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to go through then and create the database and set up all the permissions that are required. Now, this may look different to your particular hosting company's control panel, but they're all operate in a fairly similar fashion. So once you've located where you can create the databases, you should be able to create a database, create a user, and then apply the relevant permissions to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my database connection, my database. Now I'm going to put in some fictitious details into this because obviously for security purposes I don't want you to know what the real details are, but this is just a demonstration site so you can see the process and will be removed afterwards. So let's just put in some gibberish. I'll create that database. Now what I would suggest you do while doing this is make a note of these settings. So this is the name of my database, so I'm just going to copy that information and I'm just going to open up Notepad or any kind of text editor, and I'm going to put this information in there. So the first thing we've got is the name. Then after that we're going to have the database, and then we're going to have the password. So I'll go back. The next thing I can do is now create my user. So all I'm going to do is give this a username, and I'm going to use the password generator. Now I'm going to pause the video so you can't see this just for security purposes, but I'm just going to generate a password and then put that into my notepad. So I'll be back. Okay, so there's my password. Now I'd always recommend, if you don't have a password generator, to put in uppercase, lowercase, numbers, letters, and some characters like @ symbols, minus signs, and things like that. It's going to increase the level of security you have when it comes to passwords. So once I've done that, I'm going to click Create User. That will create my user for me. I don't want to save my password, so I'm going to copy my username. I've already made a note of my password. So once we've done that, I'm going to put that into my notepad, and I've got all the information ready for the WordPress installation. So the final thing I need to do with the database now is actually apply permissions, because in this C panel we've created a user, we've created a database, we've applied that user to the database, but at the moment they can't do anything. So the first thing we need to do is go in and specify what they can and can't do. So we say add user to the database, ensure that the details for the user and the database are correct, and then I'm going to say all privileges, make changes, and then that's going to mean that that user now has access to that database, and they can do things like create database tables, edit, delete, and so on. So that's everything we need to do now for the database aspect of it. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move on. We're going to upload all the files for WordPress, and then we're going to start the installation process. Okay, so I'm using Qt FTP as my FTP program, which allows me to upload all the files to the server. So I've logged in, I've gone into my public HTML folder, and I'm now in the root folder for the website, ready to upload our WordPress installation. So the next thing we need to do is download the WordPress files. So I'm going to switch over to wordpress.org, and there I'm just going to go and click on download the latest version, which in this instance is 4.41, and say I want to download it. That's then going to go through, download that to my computer, and then I'm ready to upload those files from the zip file and start the installation process. So once I've done that, I'm just going to open up the files. There's my WordPress folder, so I'm just going to open that up, and there's all the files we need to create a WordPress installation. So all I'm going to do is select all of these, move that over, and then I'm just going to drag those to upload those to the server. So we'll let that go through, unzip all the files, and start the upload process. And once that's done, I'll come back and we'll switch over and start actually installing WordPress onto our server itself. Okay, so all the files have now been uploaded to the server and we're ready to switch over and actually start the installation process. So I'll minimize this. We'll get rid of the WordPress site and we'll switch over to the root of our demonstration site. So I just refresh this and that'll start up the installation process. So as you can see, we've now got the very quick installation process from WordPress. We'll choose the language I want to work in. Click continue. That'll take us through and ask us to put the information in for the database. So we can go through, read through this, make sure everything is exactly as you need it. Hit let's go. And then we're ready to start putting this information in. So I'll transfer over the relevant information from my database. So we've got the database name. We've got the username. Localhost is fine for me. What I would always suggest is that you update the prefix from just being the standard WP to any combination of letters and numbers, because this makes hacking your database considerably more difficult. And finally, all we need to do is put the password in there. So I'll just pause the video while I put the password in. And once I put the password in, I'll just hit the submit and that'll go through, check all the details. If everything is correct, it'll then move on to the next stage of the installation. There we go. So let's just say run the install, providing everything is as it should be. That'll go through and take us through to the WordPress installation and the setting up the account details. So you can see we've got the site title, which we'll just call test site. Username, well, I'll just put in something. Actually, I'm not too bothered. Again, I would try to put something a bit random in there. And with the password, you can just create a complex password very quick and easy. So I'll just refresh this now so we get a different password and hide it so you won't know. And finally, we'll just put the email address that I want to link to this account in. So I'll just make up any email address on there. We'll have, there we go. I want the search engine to find it, so I don't check that box. Once I've done that, I'll hit install WordPress. That'll take us through, tells us we've got success, our username and our chosen password, so we'll just hit login and that'll take us into the admin, ready to start configuring the way that this actually looks. So I'm just going to take and put the username and password I've just created in there, and once we've done that, that'll log us into the admin. So just copy this information over, remember me, hit login, and we're into the admin then, ready to start configuring things. So you can see we get a welcome to WordPress. It allows us to do a few bits and pieces, and I'll just minimize that to get rid of it. I'm not worried about these panels. What I want to do is just jump into the settings and just configure some of the basic information before we move on. Some of the things that you want to make sure that every time you install WordPress, you set these up to match your own particular preferences. So if we go into General, we can check what information is in there. So I'm just going to take out this tagline because I'm not interested in that. Check that the time zone and everything is all correct, that the URL and everything is all correct, and the dates and etc. Save any changes if you make any. We'll jump over to the writing tab and we'll leave everything as it is there. Reading, again, we'll leave everything there. We'll just jump to permalinks, and this is where you can choose how you want the links to display on your website. Now, what I generally tend to do is I use the post name, but obviously you can choose any of these predefined options, or you can create a custom structure. You can even go in and create category-based information and tag-based. Now, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to hit Save Changes, and that's the basics set up. Now, the next thing I want to do is go over to Posts, and I just want to check all posts, and I want to get rid of Hello World, so I'm going to bin that off. And I'm going to do the same for pages. I'm going to come into that and I'm going to bin off the sample page. Now, the reason I do this is because a lot of people accidentally leave these things on there, and you'll tend to find that very quickly bots online will search for this information, find this hello world kind of post and start spamming it. So it's a good idea when you set things up to just delete those out there, so you start with a completely empty installation of WordPress ready to put your particular pages and content in there. Again, that's just a housekeeping thing. It's something that I do on a general basis when installing. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move on and we're going to create the installation of a couple of plugins that I recommend that you install every single time you put an installation of WordPress online. One is for security and one is for the SEO side of things. So let's take a look at how we can install these plugins next, and then we'll move on to actually uploading the theme and start to customize the way that our WordPress actually looks. Okay, so let's go to the plugins, and we'll go to install plugins so we can see what's installed, which at this point in time is the Akismet and Hello Dolly. Well, I don't want Hello Dolly, so I'm going to delete that from you to just free up that little bit of space that we don't need and to not clutter our installation up with plugins and things that are not relevant. Now, if you're going to use Akismet, which is a great way of protecting your blog from spam and junk like that, I'd recommend keeping this on there. But if you don't have any need for this, so you're not going to allow comments and things on your blog, then you can quite easily just delete this. And for this example, I'm going to do exactly that. I'm just going to delete this because I don't actually want this on there. So I'll say yes, delete these files. And while I'm at this point in time, I'm going to quickly go to settings, and then I come to the discussion, and I'm going to choose the option to allow people to comment on new posts and articles. I'm going to uncheck that. Now you can override that on a post by post or page by page basis, and some themes will override this. But if you don't want people to be able to comment, disable that at this point, and then that should reduce the ability to forget to take the comments off at any particular point. Okay, so let's go back to plugins, and let's go to add new. And then we can search the online database for any of the plugins that we want. Now, like I say, in this point, I'm just going to use 2 plugins to start off with, but obviously when we install a commercial theme, that's going to add its own plugins to our plugin installation. And obviously, as you go through and you expand your WordPress installation, you'll probably come across different plugins and add-ons that you think are going to be great for you. So the process is going to be pretty much the same every time. So what we're going to do is we're going to search, first of all, for iThemes security. Now, I'm not going to go through how we set all this up because I've already done a video on that, and I'll link that in the top right hand corner, and it'll also be linked in the description below, so you can go and take a look at that video where I'll cover this information in a lot more depth. So let's just search for that, and once we find it, then we'll go through and install that. So we'll just hit install now. We'll let that download. We'll install it. We won't activate it straight away because we'll go and install the next plugin first, and then we can activate it and set all these configuration things up later. So we'll just return to plugin installer, and the next one we're going to do is the SEO plugin, which is from Yoast. Now, there are various different plugins and different people recommend different things, but Yoast is a very, very good one. It's one I've used for a long time, and it's one that seems to do a pretty good job. It's a highly regarded plugin, and I would recommend checking it out. So we'll install that, and once we take a look at creating some content on the pages, we'll take a look at how this SEO works in a brief overview, but I will be doing a video in more detail at a later date covering the Yoast SEO. So let's just return to the plugin installer, and actually let's just go to install plugins, and we can see what we've got on there. So now we can go through and activate these. So we'll activate Yoast. I don't want the tool or anything like that, so I'll just get rid of that. And we'll also hit activate iThemes security. And then I'm going to go through, I'm going to pause the video, go through, make all these changes to the actual security side of things. But just before I do that, we can just use the Secure Your Site now to do a basic security update to the site. That'll take the sort of most important settings, then we can go through and fine tune those. And like I say, I've got a video already up that'll show you all this. Backup your site is always recommended. I've done nothing with this site. It's a completely clean site, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. But I'm going to say allow file updates, and I'm going to click one-click secure, and that'll go through and do all the security side of things, and then I'm done with this. So I could then go through, I can go to the security panel, and I can start updating and making sure that all of the different things that are highlighted as high, medium, and low priority, that I configure these to the way that I want them to be configured. So I'll pause the video, update those different bits and pieces, and then we'll come back to the next stage, which is starting to upload the actual theme to the site, and then we'll take a look at how we can start controlling the layout of the site and adding some content. Okay, so that's all the security aspect. The thing's all configured and ready to go. So we now have our clean installation of WordPress. We've got our SEO plugin added, and we've got our security settings already configured. And if we take a look at the actual site itself, you can see it's currently an empty site that's running the 2016 theme, which is the latest theme that we've got with this particular video. So you can see it's very, very basic, minimal theme. We've got a toolbar at the top that allows us to do a couple of things. It tells us what the name of the site is, and we've got the dashboard, themes, widgets, and menu. We can customize it. We can see any comments. We can create new posts, media pages, or users. We've got the SEO tab, and we've got the security tab. It also says who you are in the top corner. Now, if you're like me, I don't like this toolbar at the top, so we can easily go back in. We can jump through to the users page. We can go to your profile, and from there, and from here, we can just simply come down to show toolbar when viewing the site, and we can disable that. We can also update our name. And we can also put a nickname if we want to, and specify what we see when we post. So I'll do that. And we'll just come down and update the profile. And there we go, we're all done. So we're now ready to move on and upload our theme. Okay, so at this point we're now ready to upload the theme to our clean installation of WordPress. There's a couple of ways we can do this. We can upload it via the appearance and the themes option inside WordPress itself, but there are a few issues that you may find with bigger themes where that might time out. The way I prefer to do it is to upload it via FTP in the same fashion that we did when we uploaded the WordPress install itself. So let's take a look, first of all, how we can do it via the admin of the website, and then we'll go over and use my preferred method where we'll upload direct via FTP. So in the admin section of our WordPress site, if we come over to the left hand side and go to Appearance and choose Themes, that'll take us through and show us all the themes that are currently installed. Now, by default, whenever you install a copy of WordPress, you generally tend to end up with a couple of the default themes. And as you can see, I've got 2014, 15, and 16 already installed, and 2016 is the currently active theme. You can see that we can customize the theme from this point, or we can activate any of the other themes. We can also come into theme details, click on that, and find out a little bit more about the themes that we currently have installed in our WordPress copy. So let's close that down. As I said, we can add a new theme directly from the admin, but there are a few inherent problems with that, like I mentioned earlier, where you may find that larger themes, especially commercial themes where they've got plugins ready to be installed, they can sometimes time out and cause problems where it doesn't necessarily upload all the files, and then you have a bit of a problem. So I would say that if you want to do it through this method, all you need to do is click on Add New. That will then take you through, and you can see we have the option to choose from a pile of already available themes that we can download. We can filter those based upon featured, popular, latest, favorite, and so on. We can search the themes for a specific keyword or phrase, or we can come to the top where we can say upload theme. So if I choose that, that will open up this section at the top that allows us to choose the file, and all we need to do is just click choose file, locate the file on our system. As you can see, I've got a couple of different files available to me. Once you've done that, then you just click on install now. That will try and upload the file for you, and then it'll go through the process of actually installing the theme. Like I say, we're not going to do it that way. I'm going to do it via FTP. So I'm going to switch over to my file transfer protocol software now, and I'm going to show you that method. Okay, so I've now logged into the FTP of my site. As you can see, I've got the directory structure that may be the same as yours. You may find you have a different version, or you may find you go directly into the public HTML folder. There's going to be various different ways, but if you do see it in this way, you need to scroll through the list, find public_HTML, and that's where all of your files need to reside to be available on the website itself under your URL. So let's just double click that, and you can see that we now have all the files and folders associated with a normal install of WordPress. So what we need to do is we need to go into WP-content, and that's where all our language files, plugins, themes, and so on are located. Simply double click again to open up the themes folder, and as you can see, there's all the themes we currently have installed. And if you remember back, I said we had 2015, 14, and 16 already installed in there. So all I now need to do is upload my particular theme files, and that will then allow us to select that and activate it via the admin section of WordPress. So for this video and for this entire tutorial, we're going to be using a commercial theme that's available from ThemeForest. It's a theme called Impreza, and I've used it on a couple of commercial projects, and I've found it to be a great basis to get a versatile and professional looking website. So we're going to be using that, but obviously you can use any kind of theme that you want, and most of the plugins that we'll be looking at later on will work with most themes. You're going to find that some of the free ones may not have the features that allow you to use it, but most commercial ones will. So I'm going to come over to the zip file I've got on the right hand side. I'm going to double click that, and that's going to open up the folder, and as you can see I've got a folder called Impreza in there. So all I need to do is drag that over my FTP software, making sure that I'm in the public_HTML/wp-content/themes folder where all the themes reside. Drop that in there, then let that go through and upload all the files ready for us to activate that and then install the commercial plugins that ship with this particular theme. So I'm going to let that install, and then I'm going to go through and install everything else that needs to be done via the admin section of the Wordpress. So there we go, the folder is now uploaded, ready for us to activate it in the admin section. And now is a good time if you find that you don't want the default installed themes to be part of your server. Then you can easily just delete those now. Obviously make sure that before you delete the theme that's currently active, you change it over to the theme that you want to use. But you can get rid of them quite easily then from this method, just to free up some space and take out any unused files that may need to be updated in the future that you don't really need to do. Okay, so we've done that. Let's switch back over now to the admin of a website, and let's take a look at how we can activate this theme, and then take a look at what plugins need to be activated to get the best out of this particular commercial theme. So we're back in the theme section of our website, and as you can see, the Impreza theme is now ready to be activated, and then we can get rid of any of these other themes we don't want. So all I'm going to do is click activate. That will then tell WordPress that this is the theme you want to use. Now, because this is a commercial theme, you can see there's a couple of things we need to do. We need to install the add-ons that go with it. We can activate this to ensure that we get up-to-date copies of any of the themes that we have, and we make sure that we've always got an up-to-date copy of the theme and everything else that goes with it, including some additional add-ons that are only available once you activate this particular theme. I'm not going to worry about it right now because we're going to be using this in demonstration mode. So I don't need to worry about activating it, and I'll activate it on a live install when I need to. So let's go through now, install the add-ons that are relevant to us, and then we can get working on setting up and using the theme. So we'll go to the add-on section, and you can see we've got 4 different options available to us. You can see we've got Visual Composer, Slider Revolution, Ultimate Add-ons for Visual Composer, and the theme header builder, which is specific to this particular theme, or the plugin I should say, that's specific to this theme. Now we need to activate to unlock these, so I can activate that, and I'll go through that process and just add in my serial number now so I can activate these additional plugins. But the process is the same. All we need to do is click on Install Plugin. That will go through, install it from where we've uploaded the files, and as you can see it now says it's installed and activated. So all I'm going to do is put my serial code in and activate these additional plugins ready to start working with those. So I'll do that now, and then we'll take a look at moving on to start working with the project itself. Okay, so there we go. All of the plugins now are installed and activated, and we're ready to move on and start creating the pages. So let's start off by switching over to the pages section and coming down to all pages. And we're now ready to create our first couple of placeholder pages. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and create the basic structure of the site that I want to work with, and then we'll come back in and start fleshing out each one of those pages to get a full end result. So we're going to start off by clicking on Add New. Once we've done that, we're going to create our home page, a contact page, and a couple of other internal pages ready to start taking our content. So let's start off by creating our home page. I'm not going to set any of the settings up in this for the moment. I'll go through and we'll adjust quite a few different things in the actual theme control panel. So for now, we're just going to name these pages and leave all the settings left at default. So next up, we're going to click Add New again, and we're going to create our contact page. We'll publish that, and we'll go through then and create an FAQ page and a couple of other internal pages. So we'll click on Add New. Now I'm going to go through and publish a few more pages, and I'll pause the video and come back once I've done that just to speed up the process. Okay, so there's all of the pages I'm going to use already set up. And as you can see at the moment, we don't have anything set as either the blog page listing or the home page. So the next thing we're going to do is go through and tell WordPress what to use for those particular pages. Now, by default, the first page of your website will just show a list of the recent blog posts. If you don't want that to be the case, which in this example we don't, we can manually tell it exactly what page to use as the home page. And then anybody going to the URL for our website will see the page that we've created. In this example, that's exactly what we're going to do. So to achieve that, we simply come down to the settings and we choose reading. And in there you can see we've got front page displays. By default, it's got your latest posts. So as I say, anything that's added into the post section will be listed on your front page. So what we're going to do is we're going to change that to a static page. So we just check that radio box and you can see now we can specify what the front page is from all the pages we have created, and we can also specify what page is going to be used to display our blog posts or news posts, whatever you want to call it. So I've created a front page called homepage, and I've also created a post page which is called blog. You can see we've got a couple of other settings that we can configure and tweak on here. We can go through and specify how many blog pages to show at most, any syndication feed pages and information, and whether we want to show full text or summary. Now you may well find that some themes that you use will override some of these settings, or you may have the option to override them yourself with the Visual Composer and some of the other settings that are coming with the theme. So I'm not going to worry too much about those. I'm going to leave those as they were. There's also an option at the bottom that says search engine visibility. We can check that to discourage search engine from indexing this site. Now obviously if this is something you didn't want the search engine to pick up on, you could check that box and then it'll try to stop the search engine ranking and listing your website in the search results. There are not many reasons why you'd want to do that, but the option is available should you need to do it. So let's just hit Save Changes. And we've now configured what's going to be used for our homepage and what's going to be used for our news or blog section. So now we can go in and start styling those, laying them out the way that we want, and get a lot more control. Before we do that, however, we're going to go over and start setting some of the basic settings for the theme that we're using, and then we'll move on and start creating some content and fleshing those pages out. So let's take a look at how we can do that. Now every theme that works with WordPress is going to have its own way of being styled and controlled. So what I'm going to show you is specific to this Impreza theme, but you will find that every theme will have some range of options that allow you to configure and tweak the layout. So don't worry too much about what I'm doing with this. I'm just configuring it and it's going to give you an idea of how you can do this yourself. So if we go to the appearance section, you can see we've got the option for themes and customize. We can also edit the widgets and menus and so on. If you go into the Customize, you'll open up the WordPress Customizer, which allows you to configure and tweak certain settings. So what I'm going to do to start off with is I'm going to show you that, and then we'll go into the actual proper control panel specific to the Impreza theme. So let's have a look what's available to us in Customize by selecting that from the Appearance menu. Then we'll let that load in. And as you can see, we can configure a range of different options. We can specify the title of the site. We can specify which is the active theme, and we can change that by using the change button. We can expand out the site identity, and you can see we can change the site title and the tagline and any icon we want to use for that. We can change what's going to be used for the menus and the menu location, so we can set that up in there. We can also come in and choose what widgets are being used in relevant locations, and again this is going to be specific to the theme that you're using. Some themes have a lot more control available to you through the customize option, some have fewer, and this example with the Impreza theme, it doesn't have a massive array of different controls because they're housed in their own control panel. We can also specify the static front page as we've just done through the settings, so this is another way of achieving the same end result. And as you can see, it's showing that we've got a static page and the front page is set to home page, and our post page is set to blog, which is what we did just now. If we look down the bottom, we can collapse this left hand panel and we can expand it back out, and we can also switch it through and view it in various different devices, so we can look at it as a desktop, on a tablet and on a mobile device. So this is great if we're using this to control and configure the way that our theme looks and we want to check it across these different mobile devices. We can simply use those options at the bottom to switch the display to show us exactly what they'd look like. If you make changes to this, just hit the save option once you finish making your changes. Then we can back out of it by clicking the X in the top left hand corner. And that'll take us back to our normal page that we were on previous to this. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the Impreza options. Now you can see that we've got our own dedicated menu section on the left hand side. And in there we've got theme options, add-ons, which we've already taken a look at. We can import demo data, so if we wanted to load all the demonstration information so we can see exactly how particular pages are created based upon what the designer of this theme has sort of put together, we can import that, and you will find a lot of commercial themes and even a lot of free themes will allow you to import demo data, which gives you a good starting point to get a good grip of how specific themes and layouts are created without having to delve into a pile of documentation. So if you think that's useful to you, import the demo data and take a look at what it does. We can also create sidebars that are specific to this particular theme, and at the bottom you can see we've got information about the theme, which will tell us who the developers are, the versions, and so on. So we're going to go into the theme options because we've done everything else we want on this at this point. And then we're going to take a look at what this control panel gives us and how much control over the layout and the design we have available to us. So as you can see, we have a whole range of different options available, and they're broken down into various different categories, and each one of these sections is accessible, and we have a range of different functions and controls inside there. Certain things will expand out to give us extra controls based upon selections we make. So let's start off by going through these and changing some of the options to get it configured the way that I want to work with it. Now, I would always recommend when you're dealing with any kind of theme is either to read the documentation or test out any of these options before you commit to them, so you can see exactly how they affect the layout that you're working with, and you can make an informed decision to exactly how you want to lay everything out before you start creating your pages. So under the general setting, you can see that we can use a preloader. So if, for example, that every time a page loads up, if they may take a little longer, we can use the preloader, and that will put a visual representation on screen that the fact that the page is loading to let people know that something is happening if they're on a slower connection. Personally, I don't really like using them, but the option is there if you want it. You can see we can set the sidebar on regular pages, whether we want to have a left sidebar, a right sidebar, or we want to disable it completely. We can strip out the theme options into a separate CSS file if we want to. We can also use open graph data. And if we want to, where this has a customized version of Visual Composer, we can enable or disable the unsupported features. In other words, unsupported features inside this theme, not unsupported through Visual Composer. So you can enable or disable that to give you extra controls. Obviously, if they're unsupported, you may have undesirable effects. Below that, then, we have the custom HTML section, which allows us to put custom code in, and we can do things like we can put the JavaScript code for Google Analytics. There's a little help option at the side that tells you exactly what this is for and how to use it. So if you want to add extra code in there, you can, and you can use this to override certain features throughout the site. So on this now, I'm going to leave everything as it is. I'm quite happy with the way the data is set up in there. I don't need to change anything, so we'll come down to the layout options. And now you can see we can get to control exactly how the layout of our overall site is going to be controlled. So we can enable or disable responsive layouts. So I would say always leave this enabled because you ultimately want to have a website that's accessible to people that are using tablets and they're using mobile devices, not just desktop screens. But if for any reason, for example, you were using this as an intranet where people would only be accessing this on a computer, dedicated computers, then you could easily just disable the responsive layout and you could then get an extra level of control over it. The site canvas layout, where we want to have a full width layout or whether we want to have a boxed layout, we can just simply select between the two of those. And you can see if I select the box layout, we can then control the body background color, or we can set an image. For this example, I'm going to leave that set to the full screen, full width. You can see then we can specify site content width. So we can say exactly how wide the site is going to be, the content. Even though we've got it full width, you've still got things like the slider revolution slider at the top, the menu, the footer, and so on. They will still display full width, the background colors and things like that, but the content will be confined to the site content width you specify in this. So we can control that, just use the slider, or we can input the values directly. I'm going to leave that at 1140 because that kind of works exactly for me. If we're dealing with sidebars, what percentage width-wise do we want those to occupy in the site layout? Again, you can use the slider on that to control it yourself. And the same then for the content width. The disparity between the two of those gives you a sort of certain level of margin between the two. So, again, if you want to make sure that you're understanding what any of these options are for, you can see they have their own little help option. So you can take your mouse over and find out exactly what that particular function does. You then have your column stacking width. In other words, when do the columns go from being separate columns, so your left and right, to be in one single column, so that it'll drop down below the various different sections of the site. So you have one column which is going to work better on mobiles and tablets, so you can control that. And you can also control the width of the effects disabling. So, you get a load of control over exactly how this is going to be laid out. For me, I'm going to leave that as it is. I don't really want to tweak anything in there. Everything is working exactly as I'm quite happy with. So we can then move on to styling. So as we can see, under the styling section, we now have a load of control that allows us to customize or choose predefined layouts that are worked upon color schemes. So you can see that we can use rounded corners on various elements like buttons and things. Whether the links are underlined or not when the mouse hovers over them. We can choose from a whole range of different predefined color schemes, which you can use those to either use them in their entirety, or we can select one as the basis, and then we can actually come in and customize the specific colors for the various parts of the site, which is what I'll tend to do. So you can see if we check any of these, it then opens up and allows us to choose all the different colors, and we can customize and tweak those. So we can really get down to quite a granular level of control to specify exactly what colors are used throughout almost every aspect of our website. If we change any of these, you'll see that the colors within will change. So we can use this as a sort of starting point, and then we can customize and tweak that to our heart's content. And you can see we have a whole range of different sections we can control on there. Finally, at the bottom, we've got quick CSS, where if we want to create our own specific CSS values, or we want to override certain CSS values that are being used throughout the theme or throughout WordPress, we can do that directly in here, and that'll save that out. And then when we load the site in, it'll load that information in, and we can set whether it takes precedence over the definitions that we've got set up or not. It's a good way of doing it, because then when you update the theme to make sure you've got the most up-to-date version, the same as any of the software, you don't override any CSS changes you've made to the actual core files themselves, which is really not a recommended way of doing things. So you have that available to you, and you'll tend to find a lot of themes, probably most themes these days, well-designed ones, will give you the ability to put your own custom CSS in there, where you can then really control exactly what's going on, right down to a granular level on the site that you're working with. Next, we've got the header options. As you can see, we've got 5 predefined layouts that we can use, and we can select between any of those. We can then go through and specify whether we want to use sticky headers. So in other words, when you scroll down the page, does the header navigation at the top stay in place? We can specify whether we want that on desktops, tablets, or mobiles. We can have it on any or all, or we can just pick and choose as we see fit. We can specify whether the header is transparent. So if we use a large image at the top, then instead of having a strip across there that's the overlay color for the menu, that will be disappeared, and you can just have the text, then the overlay over the image that you're using. Full width content, whether we stretch the header to fill the full width of the content of your site or of your page, of your browser window, which will then override that 1140 pixel value for your full width of your header and so on. Your main area height, you can specify exactly how high that is, and the same for the main sticky area height. You can control that. You can invert your logo position, so you can position it left or right, depending upon the design you want to work with, and you can choose what the header scroll breakpoint is. You can then see we've got header element, and you can see it says show a search field, which we can enable or disable. If we enable it, we can choose various different options. We can choose from simple, modern, full width, or full screen. So we can control exactly how that search is displayed. Now, the site that we are going to be working on isn't going to be a particularly big site. So for me, I don't need the search field at the top. It just takes up space. So I'm going to disable that. Hit the Save Changes to make sure that's committed to the site design layout. And for now, we'll actually go through and choose this option for the header, where we'll choose this one. So we can put some information about the actual company, contact email and phone number and things. Then we can have the navigation underneath it and the logo to the left, or if we choose to actually split that over to the inverted position, it will be over the right hand side. Now, none of these choices that we make on here are committed. They are the kind of thing that we can easily come back in and tweak and adjust at any point to get it exactly as we like. Nothing is set in stone. So you see, when we actually choose that particular header, we get some different options available to us, which we can then fine-tune that specific layout. Again, I'm going to hit Save Changes to commit those changes to the database to make sure that that is now set up the way we want. So we'll hit Save Changes, and we're now ready to go on to the logo options. So if we take a look in there, you can see we can choose between a logo that's either set up as just simple text, or we can choose an image. Again, if we choose the image, it changes the options available to us. And if we change back to the text, you can see we now have less options. So Let's just call this Widgets Inc. Font size on tablets and so on, we'll leave that as it is, that's fine. If we chose the image, you can see we can set the image, we can choose additional ones for a transparent header, for tablets and mobile devices. We can choose exactly what the height, the sticky header height is, height on tablets, height on mobiles. So we get a great level of control on this theme. So let's just put that back to text for now, save the changes, and let's move on to the menu options. So from this section, we can customize the way that the menu is going to be displayed. Colors and things like that are all still controlled through the styling, and we can customize those like I showed you earlier. And we probably will come in and take a look and make some tweaks to the design further on down the line once we've got some content set up. But you can see we can set the item font size for the main items, the indents, any main item heights. We can also then go through and specify how we want the hover effect to be displayed. So I don't really want the underline, I want to have simple. And I'm quite happy to have the drop down effect to be set to just simple fade in. And we leave everything else as it is, that's fine. Quite a nice option at the bottom is mobile menu behavior. Open sub items by clicking on the menu titles. It's a good way of doing it if you don't want to hover over, because obviously that's not going to work too well on a mobile device where you use your fingers to interact with the screen. So that's a good way of being able to control exactly how they operate on a mobile device and be completely different to what it's like on a tablet, on a desktop. So that's quite cool. So we hit Save Changes. Then we'll go through to the title bar option. Now you can see we can choose how the title bar is set up on the various different pages, regular pages, portfolio, and archives. So what we're going to do is we're going to set these to be small, and we leave everything else as it is. I'm quite happy with the title, description, and breadcrumbs on all of those. That's great. And we'll hit Save Changes on there. And the footer options. We can choose what type of footer we want, whether we want a compact footer that'll have no widget set in there, or we can choose modern. We can specify whether we want to have a widget area available and the number of widgets we want to work with. So I'm going to select that and we'll leave it to 3. And we'll have the bottom footer area, that's fine. And we'll just put a copyright notice in there. So we've got a copyright at the bottom. And again, we'll hit Save Changes to make sure that they're saved. Under the typography section, we can now get in and control exactly what fonts are used on various different parts of the site and what font sets are loaded in. So you can see we can control the type of font, and we have a huge number available. All the Google fonts are available to us, as well as web-safe fonts. There's a ton of fonts, and you can go through, you can try any of these, you can just choose it, and then you can take a look at what it looked like in the little preview. That will then change based upon what font you choose, what options are available. You can then go down and you can customize and tweak exactly the size, the font sizing, the font spacing, letter spacing, and so on of the headings 1 through 6. Your regular text or your body text, the same again. You can control this now on desktops and on mobiles, and you can set both the font size and the line height to make sure you get exactly how you want it to look. Certain different fonts will have different sizes, so this is a great way of going to tweak it to get it exactly where you want to give you the best text layout on your screen. And we can do the same then with the menu text items. And we can choose if you want to use subsets as well. So you can see we've got Latin, Cyrillic, and so on. So you can control that, and we may come back in at a later point and change the fonts in there. But for now, we're quite happy with that. Portfolio options. Again, we've got the option to specify whether we want to have a sidebar in there. I'm not going to be dealing with a portfolio in this, so I'm not going to change anything on there. But you can come in and change and control that. The blog options. You can see we can choose the single posts, the home page, the archive pages, and the search results, and the size of the excerpt that's going to be used. So we can come in and we can tweak those. So I'm going to say that for mine, I don't really want to have the author because it is only me that's going to be doing it. Comment number and tags, I don't really want any of those. So we'll just take all that information off there. We do the same on all of these. We leave the read more button on there because that's useful. We'll do the same again. And we'll do the same for the search as well. So we'll say we want to have categories and read more. So you can see we can control the pagination as well. So we can have regular pagination. We can have the load more button. So once the set number of posts are displayed, we can then click the load more. Or we can have the infinite scroll. So as we scroll down, it gets towards the bottom of the list. It'll automatically load in the next load of options. We can even control the actual layout of the blog pages. So you can see we can specify we want a small circle image, classic, masonry, and so on. We will come back in and take a look at tweaking some of these later on. We've got some content in there, but for now, I'm going to leave those settings as they are and hit Save Changes. And then finally, we've got the manage options, which allows us to do things like we can reset everything, we can back everything up, or we can copy all this information which has now gone through, and all of the options that we've set and configured. If we wanted to transfer this over to another website, or we wanted to just make a backup, so if anything happened, we can always put the theme back to exactly how we've tweaked it. We can copy or we can save those options and then load them in at any point on a clean installation of Impreza. It's a great thing. And again, you'll find a lot of commercial themes and a lot of free, well-designed themes will have the same kind of options available. So you can take that backup and know that you've got all of your layout and all the time you spent getting everything configured the way you like it. You've got all that saved and backed up. So if you need to call it back up, you can do it at any point. So there's the theme options. So now we're going to move on and start fleshing out those pages and creating some sliders using Slider Revolution 5. So let's move on to those now, and let's start to build our website. So let's start off by creating the slider that we're going to use on our home page. This is going to be a great call to action that's really going to set the scene for what our site is all about, and a visual treat for people that land on the site. So to do this, we come down to Slider Revolution on the left hand side and we choose Slider Revolution for the pop-out. And that takes us into the Slider Revolution control panel. So as you can see, we have a couple of options across the top. We've got some information about the plugin itself, and you can see we have a sort of update history and so on the bottom. Now I'd recommend that I'm going to go over this in quite brief detail. I'm going to show you how to set it up, but I'm going to go into a huge amount of detail of all the options because there are a huge amount of options available to you with Slider Revolution. However, we have a full video series available on the channel, and I'll link that in the description and also in the in the corner right now. So I'd recommend going over there and taking a look once you've completed this video if you want to get a real good understanding of exactly how to start working with Slider Revolution and get the best out of this amazing plugin. So with that being said, let's click on New Slider. And from that, we'll then start creating and configuring our first slider. So this will take us in now so we can choose a range of different options. You can see in the main section we can go through, we can choose the content source. We can give the slider a title and a shortcode and an alias. We can choose the type of slider we want, or we can choose from a range of presets. We can configure the slide layout, and we can get some visual ideas of what it's like and tweak the different settings for each one of the different devices that we can use this on. We also have an option at the bottom that controls the overflow and whether we respect the aspect ratio or not, and we can set the minimum height. We can also custom build and implement information, so you can see we can choose different options and edit slides and so on. So let's keep this simple and straightforward for this example. We'll use a default slider. We'll name this homepage so we know exactly where it's going to go, and we'll give it an alias of homepage. That'll create the shortcode for us, but we don't really need to use that if we're using Visual Composer. We can just use Visual Composer to choose exactly how the slider is going to be displayed. If we scroll down then, you can see we have the option to choose from a standard slider, a hero scene, or a carousel slider. Or we can expand this out and we've got a whole range of different options available to us. We can even save a preset from what we set up ourselves. Well, we're not going to worry about that. We're going to choose a standard slider. We're going to leave it to auto. We're going to set the height of this to be 500 pixels. And we'll leave everything else set to auto. And for now, we'll leave everything else as it is. You can see we also have a range of options down the right hand side where we can choose the general settings, any layout and visual, the navigation, parallax effects and so on. For now, we're going to leave those as they are. Their defaults will be fine for us, but if we want to come back in and tweak them later on, we can do if we need to. So we'll hit save the settings on there. That will create the basic slider setup, which we can then move on and start actually populating that with the pictures and the text and information we want to work with. So we're now in the slide editor, and as you can see, again, we've got a whole range of options, and Slider Revolution 5 is a very comprehensive piece of software. You can do the bare minimum to get some good looking slides, or you can get really right down and get stuck into this and get some amazing animation effects and 3D effects and so on. Again, like I say, we've got video tutorials that cover a whole range of different ways of creating your sliders and controls and options that are available in this. Check those out when you're ready. But for now, let's go through and set the basic settings we need. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set the image we're going to use. So we're going to choose main background image. That will bring up the change image option, and you can see it opens up some other options available to us. We'll hit change settings. So we now can upload the image we want to work with, or the images we want to work with. So all I'm going to do is I've prepared a couple of images that I've set to 1200 pixels wide by whatever the height that is required for that particular layout. And I'm just going to simply drag those in and upload those to the site. We're going to use those as the basis for our slider. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to give it the alt text, so anybody that's using a screen reader, they'll know exactly what this image is about. So we'll just call this one mountain range. Just spell it right. Mountain range, and we'll do lake for this one. So we've given them some alt tags. We're going to choose the lake to be the first image, the first slider we're going to work with. We'll insert that. Once we've done that, you see it shows us a representation of that now at the bottom. If we want to, we can configure how this is displayed. By default, it's set to be center. So the slider will base its sizing and its proportion based upon the center point of the image, both horizontally and vertically. In this example, the boat is kind of more of the feature point of the slider. So all we can do is we can change that. So we can come to source settings, and you can see we've got the option to say we want this to be center top, center right, and so on. So we can literally say center bottom. You see now if we scroll down, it's now based upon the center of the image, but focusing on the bottom portion of it. So any resizing and scaling that will go on with the slider will go from the center up as opposed to the center up and down from the center option, if that makes sense. So we make sure that we get this to be featured on the image, on the slider. So what we'll do now is we'll add another layer and we'll put some text over the top of this that we'll animate, that'll give a call to action. So we'll click add layer and we'll come down to any of the options available. We're going to keep this simple. We're going to use just text. So we'll just choose text from there and we can now type in the text. So we'll put some text in there. We'll confirm that. We can now reposition that text any way we want. We can use the alignment options at the top. So we can say we want to align this to the center, and we'll align the center to the horizontal and the vertical. So we can control that. We can now go in and change the way that looks. So if we take a look at the style section, we can choose from any of the predefined layouts, and we can hover over and see exactly what any of those look like. We could use these as the basis for what we are going to do. So we could say, let's come down to, for example, photography display, choose that. You can now see that that puts that into the right size font, and all the other settings are set on there. We can now configure that further to make sure it matches into exactly how we want it to look. So for this example, I want to put a black semi-transparent background around that. So if I just expand this out, you can see we have a whole range of different options that are available under different tabs. So we can really get down and start tweaking and controlling this. So let's just specify that we want to have a background color. So let's choose the background color. We'll just set that to be black. And that's fine. Set that. Obviously, I want the image to still show through from underneath, so I can set this to transparent if I want to. If we have it set to 1, it's fully opaque. If we set it to 0, it's completely transparent and non-existent. So we can use any figure in between. So we do 0.5, for example. Hit the Enter key. That will now make it semi-transparent, so we can still see some of the image underneath it. If we want to put some more space around that, so the background actually has some separation from the text, we can simply do that by just coming into this section, and we can just use the tab key to go between. We set 10 pixels on each one of these. And there we go. So we've now put the background color, we've positioned it where we want, and we've put semi-transparent, and we've given it some extra space around it. Now, we can look at these height and width and the X and Y position, and we can just position this where we want to. Paying attention to the fact that we want the X to be set to 0 is still centered, so we can manually put that if we want to, just to make sure we've got it aligned as we want. And we've got a whole range of other things, but for now we'll leave it as it is. If we switch to the animation section, we can now specify how that animates in, and you can see we've got fade in and fade out. If we expand that, we can just choose from any of the predefined options. So we could say we want to have this long from bottom, and that'll scroll up from the bottom. Or we can say short from bottom, for example, or skew, whole range of different things. So say short from bottom, so it'll be very quick and very short, and we'll let it fade out at the end. That's fine. Again, you can come in, you can tweak these, and you can get them exactly where you want them to be. That's easy enough to do. So if we scroll down a little bit now, we'll see the timeline of this particular slider. So you can see that the fade there at the top, we've got this is the background, and then this red layer is our text layer. so we can fine tune and tweak exactly how long that animation takes and when it comes in. So at the moment it comes in just after the slide loads up. Well, we might say we want to have a little bit of a pause. So we can do that. We can drag it over and position it, or we can just type in exactly where we want it. We can also then adjust the duration of the transition. So you can see that now slows it down. If we want to, we can easily come in and create another layer like this. So let's just say, for example, we want to do the same thing again. We'll click on it and we'll just choose to duplicate that. So we now get an identical duplicate with all of the settings set exactly the same. So let's just come over and make sure we've got this aligned exactly where we want it to be. But let's change a few things about it. We don't want it to be the same size, but we'll change that, and we'll just come into the font. We come to the top here and we'll say we want this to be 40 pixels, and we'll set the line height to 50 pixels. So we now have a slightly smaller version that will also work. So again, you can see the animations now are set to be identical because we copied that layer. So let's just offset that now. So we stagger the animation. So now as this happens, if we scroll through the timeline, we can see exactly what will happen. So our first one will slide up, and our second one will slide up. So there's our first slider created. Let's just come up to the top, hit save, and that'll save the slider. Now what we can do is, if we want to replicate that, we can simply come up to this slide, and what we can do is we can say duplicate. That'll take a moment, that'll duplicate the slide, everything will be intact, all the things are in exactly the same place. So what we can do now is we can come down, choose the source settings, change the background image, and then we can come down and we can change this information in here. So we can just double click on that, and we'll just call this, actually just call it Wonderful Mountain. Do the same on the one below. And we'll confirm that. So there are our two sliders. So we just save that now, and we've got two sliders set up that have a really nice display. Now with this particular slider, you can see that the background mountain doesn't need to be placed at the bottom. We can put that back to center. It'll have more relevance based upon the middle of the image. So we can simply come up, go to source settings, change that then to be center again, and we can take a look at that. Yeah, that looks better. Hit save the changes or save the slide, and everything is put into place. So there's our slider creator. We've got two slides set up. We've got some animations on there. We've duplicated things. We've adjusted things, aligned things, whole range. So hopefully that's given you a good idea of how you can sort of get the basics covered in Slider Revolution 5. Like I say, once you finish this video, go and take a look at some of the other videos in the series. They really will get you up to speed on some of the more advanced features, as well as the basic features, go into more detail than we've done in this video. Take a look at those. So now let's move on to start creating the pages. So with our slider in place, let's move on now and start creating our home page. So if we come back to our pages section and go into all pages, we can then start working on the home page. So as you can see now, we've got them labeled up as posts page and front page because we've set those in the WordPress settings. So let's just come in and choose the home page and start working on editing that now. So we set up quite a few of the different options down the right hand side down here, but because we're setting this as the home page, there's a couple of things we can do, and this is again is theme specific, so don't worry and think if you've got to do this on every single site, because you're not going to have these options available to you. But what I need to do is go in and tell it that I don't want the title bar displayed at all, so I'm going to say hide the title bar on this particular page, and now let's start working on the actual site content. So at the moment we're looking at the normal editor for WordPress, and we want to start working with Visual Composer. It's going to give us a much better way of working with the site layout, and we can get more complex looking layouts without having to get in and start messing with shortcodes. Now in much the same way as I said with Slider Revolution, I'm not going to go into tons of detail with Visual Composer. I'm going to show you how to build these pages. But if you want to get a good understanding of exactly how this works from the initial sort of setup point of view, right the way through to find out what most of the controls do inside Visual Composer, there's a whole series of videos available on the website and on the YouTube channel, which I will link in the description below and also up in the top right hand corner with one of the cards. So check those out once you finish this video. get yourself a really good understanding, and you can then start to create some amazing looking websites and pages very easily with a drag and drop environment that is Visual Composer. So let's start by invoking the backend editor. That'll switch us over now to the Visual Composer option. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to set up some of the basic parameters for the page. You can see we have three options available to us. We can add an element, we can add a text block, or we can come in and add a template. Now we can create our own templates, or we can load in one of the predefined ones that ship with Visual Composer. We can also come to the top left hand side and you can see we can add an element from here. We can choose the template option. We can switch it over to full screen. We can choose any of the page settings that are specific to this particular instance of Visual Composer, or we can switch over to the front end editor. We're going to keep this simple. We're going to say let's add an element, and from there you can see that now opens up and shows us all the options we have available to us. We also have the Ultimate VC, or Ultimate Visual Composer add-ons added into this as part of the commercial theme. So there's a whole range of options that are available that are expanded through that plugin. So you may find that if you use Visual Composer, whether you purchased it or it comes as part of a theme, not everything that we use in here is going to be available to you, but we're going to concentrate primarily in this video on things that are part of the standard copy of Visual Composer. So you should find you can follow along with everything I'm doing, depending upon whatever version of Visual Composer you're using. So let's start off by saying we want to insert Revolution Slider. Now this is one of those things that once you install Revolution Slider, this will automatically activate this option. If you don't have Slider Revolution installed on your copy of WordPress, then you won't see this option. It won't be available to you. So let's click on that. That'll bring up the Slider Revolution or the Revolution Slider settings, and we can choose a couple of things. We can give it a widget title, which will put a text title above this particular element, which we don't want to do. We can choose the Revolution slider that we want to work with, and we can give it an extra class name should we want to reference this through custom CSS in the future. We've only got one slider available to us, so you can see we can only choose homepage, but should we have created multiple different sliders, we can reference those and call those up on a page-by-page basis just by simply choosing them from this drop-down list. So we'll choose that one. Then we'll hit Save Changes. That will put the slider in there for us. We can now go on and start setting up some of the basic information on the page itself. So what I'm going to do, underneath this, I'm going to use a text block that'll say something about what we're doing, and then underneath that we're going to deal with 3 columns of information that's going to give an overview of the key services that our website is going to provide for people. Then we'll move on and take a look at adding some extra things in later on. So let's start off by adding another row in. So we'll click to add an element. We'll choose to add a new row in. Now, because we've got 2 separate rows, we can now treat this one independently of the Slider Revolution row. So what we can do with this is we can set this to be multiple columns if we want to. We can go in and we can set various different things. We can change background color, and we can do a whole range of other things on there. But for now, we're going to leave that empty. I'm going to create a 3rd row, and this one is going to be split into 3 blocks. So I've now got 3 columns that are all ready to be for me to put placeholder information in there. So at the moment, these are just the rows that are empty. They don't contain any information. There are no widgets placed in there, so we've got nothing to reference. So all we need to do is click on the plus, and then we can start adding content into any of these blocks. So I'm going to put a text block in there. That'll open up the text block settings, and I can now put in the call to action message that I want to use underneath our slider. So I'm going to put some text in there that'll call to action. So there's my call to action information. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to quickly style that. So I'm going to highlight it, expand this out so I can see everything I'm working with, and I'm going to expand this down. I'm going to choose heading 2, and I'm going to set this to be center aligned. So I'm going to hit Save Changes, and that's going to apply this text block widget into our page layout. It doesn't save the overall page, it just saves this widget. So we hit save, and you can see that's now inserted that information in there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and we're going to create these 3 individual blocks. So we'll click to add the first one in there, and we'll create a text block, and we'll just put our text in there, and we'll leave it as it is. That's fine. We'll just use that as our sort of semi call to action, and we'll put above it, we'll put a title in there. We'll highlight it, and we'll just set that to be heading 4 and center align it. Save our changes on there. And the beauty of working with Visual Composer is because I want to create 3 blocks of effectively the same type of layout, I can simply come in and I can duplicate this twice. Then I can just drag this over and position it into each one of the block elements that I want, and I can just come in and edit that, and I can just change the information that I want on there. And we do the same for the last one. And hit save changes. So there's the basic elements of our page created. We'll come back in now and we'll style those once we've taken a look and we see exactly what they look like on the page and see what we need to do to get them where we want them to be. So we'll hit update in the top right hand corner. That'll save everything we've just done, and then we can switch over and take a look at this on the actual site itself. So I've got a couple of ways I can do that. I can hit view page if I want to, or I can hit preview changes, or alternatively I could create a new tab and just go to the URL of our home page. So let's just say I'm going to click on this link at the bottom where it says permalink. I'm going to hold the control key down and I'm going to open up a new tab. So then we can go through and we can take a look. So there we go. There's the basics of our page put together. It's not really where we want it to be. At the moment, we want this to sort of fill the entire section of the screen. We've got no navigation in there. There's nothing to separate this information. So it's all looking a little bit bland. But we can go back into Visual Composer and we can adjust that, get it exactly as we want. So let's switch back over. Let's start configuring now to get this exactly where we want it to be. So we've got the slider set up, we've got everything configured in there, but what we can do now is we can actually go in and configure the row. So we can configure how the elements interact via the row with the page layout. So let me show you what I mean. If we look in the top right hand corner of each of these rows, you can see we've got 4 icons. We've got the expand and contract icon that'll shrink things and expand them. We've got the edit, we've got the clone, and we've got the delete. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose to edit this row, and that will now bring up a whole range of options that are specific to the row that you're working with. So you can see we can control things like row height, row or column layout. We can specify one full width, colors, background images, whole range of different options. We've got extra tabs across the top that really allow us to get really, we can get down there and really design things as we want them to be. Now you will find that certain themes and certain copies of Visual Composer, based upon how they're configured, won't necessarily have all of these options available to you, but you shall still have the general options and you have the design options. You just may not have background and effect. This is specific to this particular theme and possibly some other themes out there that are commercial options. So don't worry too much about these, and for this entire example we're not going to touch those anyway. We're going to leave those as they are. So we look at general. I want to stretch this out. I don't want any padding, so I'm going to specify no padding on there. Everything else I'm going to leave as it is because we don't want to change anything on there. Hit save changes, update the page. Once we updated that, we can take a look at the changes that's made to the actual page itself. So we come back to our test page, refresh that, and once we've done that, you can see now that our slider fills out the entire width of the screen with no space above and below. So that's getting exactly where we want that to be. So the next thing we want to do now is give this a background color, make this stand out a little bit better to separate it from the information that's going to sit below. So let's switch back to the site, or the admin for the site, and we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to come up, we're going to choose to edit this example of the second row, so we're going to click on that. What we're going to do now is we're going to customize the colors of that. So to control this, we've got a couple of things we can do. You can see we've got row color style. At the moment it says content colors, so there's nothing going on. So if we expand that out, you can see we've got alternate colors, primary background and white text, secondary background and white text, or custom color. Now, again, you're going to find this may be down to the theme that we're working with. You may just have the option to choose a color that you want to work with through the design options section where you can set the background color in there. But we've got some extra options. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down, and if I want to, I can choose custom colors, or if I want to keep everything in keeping with the theme, then I can choose the primary background or the secondary background colors of white text. And then depending upon what predefined theme we've chosen, or what predefined color scheme we've chosen for the theme, or if we've customized it, then that will pick up those colors from that. So we get a consistency without having to worry about coming into every single row that we custom color if we want to change it in the future. So the option is there, it's entirely up to you. So what I'm going to do is, for this example, I'm going to say secondary background and white text. Hit save the changes. We'll leave the paddings and things on there for now. We'll hit save changes. We'll update the page. And then we'll switch back over to the actual site itself and we'll take a look at what that's done to the layout. So as we can see, that's picked up one of the colors from our site. If we wanted to change that, we can go back in and we can say, let's edit the row again. and let's this time choose a different option. So let's just say we want to use the primary background color with white text. Update that. Switch back over to the site. Once everything's loaded back up, we can refresh the page and take a look at the change we've got on there. So there we go, we've got a different color now. So you can see that we can easily go back and forth and adjust and change these colors as we see fit. You know, if we want to get in there, customize it, we can do that. So let's just say I preferred the previous color. I want to use that darker blue, so I'm going to come back in, choose that to be the secondary color, save the changes, update that, and we're good to go. Now, I'm finding the fact that these have some text on there is just a little bit boring. So how about we go in and put some images in there and we just get a little bit more color into the overall layout of the site. Well, to do that, it's pretty easy. So come back into the back end of the site for this page, and we've got these text blocks, but we're not limited to that. We can add any other elements we want in there, and we can really get down and customize any of these different columns. So let's just say we want to put a picture in there. I can click the plus in the first column, and we've got the option to insert any of these different elements. We're going to keep it simple, and we're going to say we're going to have a single image. That will then open up the single image settings box, at which point we can choose the image you want to work with, the image dimensions, the image alignment, whether you want to make it clickable to open up a lightbox, whether we want to make the image clickable so it actually takes us through to another page, which in this example is something we'll probably take a look at, whether we want to animate those elements, and then we want to give it an extra class name so we can then reference it through custom CSS should we want to make some specific changes to that particular image or anything that uses that specific class name that we apply. We're not going to get into that much detail, so we'll leave that as it is, but we will go and choose some images. Our media library. Now I've prepared a couple of images that I'm going to use for this particular section, so I'm just going to upload those to WordPress. Same as we did last time, I'm going to go through and give these alt tags. It's always good to give them alt tags because it helps with your search engine results and people that use screen readers. Okay, so we've got our images in there, so let's go and choose the ones we want to work with. So I'm going to choose the mountain range to start off with. We'll insert that. I'm going to leave these to be full size, that's fine because they're not particularly big images. I've scaled them proportionally. I'm going to set my alignment to be center because once you go to mobile devices and things start to stack up on top of each other instead of being side by side like they are on the full screen, it's going to be better to have your images centered then, because if they're left or right aligned, if the images are slightly smaller than the viewport of the device you're viewing them on, they can tend to look a little bit unprofessional. So I'd advise put them in the center if you're dealing with multi-column layouts, because then it means your images always look good no matter how you're being viewed, whether it's on a mobile device, a tablet, or a desktop computer. Yeah, so let's have some animation. Let's just say I'm going to have these fade in. And I'm not going to worry about selecting a URL, but if I wanted to, I could simply hit select URL. I could then choose any of the pages that I've got on my site. So if I had pages that are specific to each one of these columns, I could make the image a link through to that. So it's another method of finding out information based upon the link they want to click on. So we'll hit save changes on that. We'll reposition that so it's at the top. And again, like I did last time, I'm going to duplicate this 2 times. We're then going to drag that over into the relevant columns in the relevant position, and we're just going to simply come in and change the image without having to go through and choose all the settings again. So it's a quick way of fine-tuning your layout without having to go through the boring process of doing every single step over and over again. So hit save changes on there. So there's our column layout now. We've got 3 different columns with some text information and an image at the top of them. We can make those clickable if you want to. Each one of those is going to fade in, so we're going to have some movement on the page. Let's just update that. We'll switch over then to the actual site itself, and we'll take a look at that home page to see what it looks like. So switch over, we'll refresh this. And there's our images fading in. So we've got a little bit of motion in this, so it looks a little bit more interesting. So there's our home page coming along nicely. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go through and set up the widgets at the bottom, and we're going to set our navigation at the top, and some of the information is going to be listed up in there. And we'll change the title as well. Okay, so now let's move on and start creating the menus we're going to use on the website. We're going to create two menus in this example. We're going to create one for the top section, which will go across here. This should be the main navigation. And we're also going to create one that will be a widget in the footer area, which will be second level navigation. So when people scroll down the page, they can access that. Just make life a little bit easier. It's a good sort of best practice kind of thing. So let's come into Appearance and choose Menus. And once we're in there, we're going to create the two menus we want to work with. So we're going to call the first one Main Menu. We'll create that menu. Once we've done that, we're going to tell the theme and we're going to tell WordPress that this is the main menu for the site. We don't want to automatically add new top level pages to the menu. We want to do that manually so we get a level of control that we can specify what is and what isn't displayed in there. So once we've done that, we're going to come in and we're going to add all the pages we want. So we're going to add all of these, add them to the menu. Once we've done that, we're going to reposition everything. So we're going to say we want the home page first, our services. Yeah, that'll do. That's fine. If we wanted to make any of these second levels, so we have drop-down menus, for example, we may have blog and we may want to break that up into multiple different sections. We can easily just indent. That now becomes the About Us, becomes a subsection of the blog menu. And if we want to get rid of that, we just literally take it back. If we want to change the title that's going to be used in the navigation, any of the labels, we can do that. So we can take that from being home page and just put home in there. And then once we've done that, we can just hit Save Menu. And then we can go on and create our second menu. So let's create a new menu. And we'll just call this one Footer Menu. Same again, Create Menu. We're not going to check footer menu because that would position it in this particular theme in this area where we've got the widget copyright. So we're not going to worry about that. We're going to leave that as is because we're going to set this up to be manual and we're going to put it where we want it in the footer section. So again, let's just say select all on there. We'll add all those items. Then we'll reposition them to where we want. So we'll have our services second. We'll change home page to be home. And we'll hit Save Menu. So there's that done. Now we know just to tell the theme where this menu is going to be used. Well, we've done that by choosing the main menu option at the top. So if we just go into this now and refresh the page, we should find that at the top, there's our navigation with our rollover effect, exactly as we want it to be. The footer menu, you'll notice, isn't actually evident at the moment. That's because we don't have any widgets in place to put information into this dark area at the bottom, which is our footer. So let's come back to the menu section. This time we're going to come to the appearance, we're going to choose widgets. And if you remember back to where we were setting up the theme, we specified we wanted to have 3 columns in the footer. So we've got footer first widget, second widget and third widget all available to us. Anything we put in the fourth widget will be ignored because we've only set this to have 3 sections. So we'll go into the second foot area and what we'll do is we're going to put a custom menu in this. We'll drag that over and drop it in. We're going to call this Useful Pages. And then we're going to choose the menu we want. So we've got footer menu and the main menu. Well, we've set the footer menu to go in there and we'll hit save. And then we're going to fill in the information for the first widget and the second widget. So, or the first and the third, sorry. So in the first one, we're just going to put some text in there. And in that, we're just going to put About Us. So we're going to have a little bit of text information in there. And I'll just copy some lorem ipsum text into there. So we've got some filler text in there. So there's the information about our company. Let's just split that into 2 paragraphs and we'll specify we want to automatically add paragraphs. Save that. And then we're going to do the same again in the third and final widget section. So we're going to go in and we're going to specify we want to have text in there. And we're going to use this for the company address. And we'll put some text in there. We'll put a telephone number. Automatically add paragraphs. So there's our company information. So we'll hit save on that. Then we'll just go back and take a look at the site and we should find that our 3 widgets are all set up now in the footer area with everything we want. So there we go. There's our About Us, our Useful Pages and the company address information. So everything's starting to take shape right now. So next up, I want to make a couple of quick changes to the actual layout. If we take a look at the site, you can see that we've got the logo on the left-hand side and this empty area on the right-hand side. Now, the design that I chose for the header allows me to put some information over this right-hand side, such as an email address, a phone number, and so on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and set up exactly what's over that side of the header, and I'm going to change the title to something that's a bit more in keeping with the actual content of the site. So I'm going to switch back to the dashboard, and I'm going to come to my Impreza and the theme options. And from there, we're going to go through and we're going to choose the header options. And as you can see, this is the header layout that I chose. So if I scroll down, I now have the header elements that I can set up and choose what I want in there. So I can say show contact, show social links. And if I wanted to, I can choose to show a drop down that has other links and things like that in there. I'm not going to worry about that. I don't want to drop down in there, but I will choose some social links. And we'll have a phone number in there, which we'll just put whatever in, doesn't really matter. Same for the email. We can put custom text or custom icons if you want to, and I'm going to have some social networks in there. I'm just going to put some null links in there for the moment, just so they just put the icons up without having to worry too much about putting some proper links in there. So if I just hit save changes on that now, if we come back over to the home page and refresh that, we should now see we've got some links over there. So there we have a little bit more information, so it makes the header look a little bit fuller. And like I say, we're going to change this now to something that's a bit more relevant. So we'll come over to the logo options and we're going to call this there we go. So there we go, that's looking a little bit better. We could replace that with a logo if we wanted to quite easily, and we'll also take a look at tweaking some of these colors. But just to show you what I was talking about earlier on, if we come back into the styling option, where we've got white and blue at the moment, and you can see that we've got the blue in the heading for the navigation, we've got this blue area, you know, there's blue throughout the site in various different sections. We could come back in and we could say, well, we want to have a completely different site. Let's go for mild ocean. Save the changes on that. Come back in and refresh the page, and then all our color scheme should change. So we now have a completely different color scheme, quick and easy. So let's put that back to, let's have white royal. Let's try that, see what that looks like. See if I like that any better. And the answer to that would be no. So we'll go back and we'll set it back to white and blue, save the changes, and we'll tweak the colors a bit later. So there's the basics of that done. We've done the navigation at the top. We've put the information in the top section here with some social links. We've set up and animated the home page. We put our widgets in the footer section. So we're now ready to move on and start taking a look at some of these other pages. So we'll move on and do the contact us page second, because that's going to allow us to embed things like a Google Map, contact form, and so on. So let's take a look at creating that page now. So we're back in the pages section and we're viewing all the pages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to the contact us page, click on that, and we're going to start editing that page. So as I said, we're going to put in a map at the top, we're going to put a contact form in there, and we're going to put some information down the right hand side that just reiterates our address details. So like we've done before, let's click to add the back-end editor in. Let's just add an element, and from in there we're looking for the Google Maps. And what we'll do is we'll let that come in, and we'll leave the address in there because it's not really important on this, but all you need to do is put the address to the relevant location. The marker text, you can just put what you want to sort of say on the marker. You can choose to show the marker when the text, when the map is loaded, which we'll do. You can choose the map type when you have a road map with terrain, satellite and road maps. Let's just say let's have a road map and terrain. We can set the zoom level, so how close we are to it, any value from 1 to 20. We can also set the map height, and you can see we've got additional markers and some other information on this. So we can go in and we can tweak and configure if we want to, but we'll just leave the default settings in there, that's fine. We'll hit save changes. What we will do is like we did with the slider, I want to set this to be full width. So I'm going to come up to the row, I'm going to edit the row settings, I'm going to set this to be no paddings and stretch this out like we did with the last one. Hit save changes, and that should be our map set up. Again, we can come back in and tweak should we find we need to make any changes to the content on there. So next thing, I'm going to create another row. I'm going to specify what a row in there. I'm going to split this into 2 columns. I'm going to set it to a 2/3, 1/3 column, so we're going to have a bigger area where the contact form is going to be. And then on the right hand side, we can have the address reiterated. So let's come in now. Let's click plus. We're going to choose to put in, and I'm looking for contact form. So you can see we've got some information in there. So we'll just put in our email address. We can then go through and say what fields are required. Now this is a very basic form. It only gives us the option for name, email, message and phone. We can also put a capture in there so we can make sure that we've got human beings actually contacting us. If you want to get more detailed forms, I'd recommend taking a look at something like contact form 7 or something along those lines, which is going to allow you to get more complex with your forms, but you can still work in fundamentally the same way. So we're going to say we want to have a name, the email is required, we'd like a phone number, but it's not required, and the message field is fine, and we'll say you want to show the capture as well. We'll then go through to the button tab, and we'll choose the button label, and we'll set what we want to say in there. What kind of button do we want? Let's go for outlined. Primary color's fine, but we want to choose any of the colors, or we can choose to create a custom color. Or we can choose any of the primary, secondary, light or contrasty themes from there. The button size and the button alignment. So we'll leave those as they are, and actually I'll set that to be right aligned. So let's save changes on there. I'm going to come over to the second column and we're going to click in there. We're going to put a text block in, and I'm just going to quickly switch over to the front end of the site, and I'm going to copy the company address information. Come back into this, delete what we've got in there, paste that in, make sure that we don't have any excessive styling in there. Take all that stuff out, switch back to visual and save changes. So there's our information. So there's our basic contact page done. We'll hit update on there. Then we'll switch over and take a look at what that looks like on the website itself. So let's just jump over to the test site. Let's come to the contact us page and click on there, and let's see what that's come out like. And there we go. So you can see there's our map, our little pop-up. Our little pin is set in there, the zoom level is set up. We've got the option for all of the 4 different fields. You can see anything with an asterisk in it is required. We've also got the capture option at the bottom. The contact us button is set at the right hand side. The company information is all set up there. So we've got quite a nice looking page layout already set up for us. So that's our contact page all done. So next up, we're going to take a look at setting the FAQ page up. Now the FAQ page is going to be a little more complex than some of the other pages we've created, because we're going to go in there and we're going to start working with an accordion to allow us to have a very nicely laid out and simple to navigate page. So let's click and go in and start working with that. And we're going to switch the back-end editor back on again so we can work with the Visual Composer. We're going to specify we want to add an element. And what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we're going to choose the accordion as an option. Now, the accordion is a very, very easy thing to work with, but it's a very powerful little piece of code. So it allows us to break things down into small sections, which we can expand out then to see the answer. So we can put the question in the actual title itself, and then we can put the answer underneath. Very easy. So let's create our first accordion. So you can see that we have a couple of little sort of context boxes. The blue option is the entire accordion itself. So there's the primary settings for the way the accordion operates. The orange box then is for the actual title of the section. And then once we add in the content that's going to sit below the title, we'll then have a third context icon set that we can then control what happens with that. So under section 1, let's click on the edit section. And we're going to put our question in there. So we're going to change this from section 1. We're going to put a question. So we're going to say, are bikes included? We can place an icon if you want to. What we can do is specify, is this the active section? whenever the page loads. So we can say we want this to be the first thing to be seen. So we'll say yes, we want that to be the case. Do you want it to be full-size content or remove the padding on the content area? That's entirely up to you. Background color and text color, well, we're going to leave those as default. We're not going to change those for now. So we'll hit save changes on that. So there's the question. Now we need to put the answer in. So all we need to do is click on the plus. And we can now put any element we want in there. We can put maps in there, text in there, images in there, anything you want. We're going to keep it simple. We're going to put a text block in there. And we're just going to use that then to answer the question. So we'll just... Oh, wrong one. Let's just reiterate the lorem ipsum text. So we'll just paste that in there. Let's get a bit creative with this. So let's say we wanted to have an image in there. So we can click at the beginning of the paragraph. We'll say add media. We're going to choose one of the pictures. So I'm not really bothered which one we're going to use. We'll just choose this one for now. If we scroll down, we can specify the attachment display settings. So we will say we're going to have that aligned to the left-hand side. We don't want it to link to anything. And we'll use the medium size of 300 by 200 pixels. That's fine. But we've got thumbnail, medium, and full size in there. So we insert that into the page. That then will be inserted. The text will flow around it. So we've got a nice looking little bit of information on there with an image. And we'll say save changes on that. We'll now move on to the second section. So we'll click on section 2. You can see we get the same again. So now we can click and edit the section. So we're going to give this a different question in there. And we're going to say another question. So that'll be fine. And we'll say we don't want that to be the section loading. We'll say everything else is fine on there. Hit save changes. Do the same again. So we can click to add the information. We'll do a text block. And we'll just copy and paste that information in again. Hit save changes. If I need to add a third section, you can see I can just click to add a section. Click on the section to expand it. Click to add the question in there. Add another question. Save the changes on that, and we'll add our third and final text block in there. We'll do the same again, so we'll just paste our text in, hit save changes, and we're done. There's our accordion all set up. So let's just update the page. Then we can jump over to the FAQ page and take a look at what that looks like. So there we go. Our FAQ page is now set up. So you can see that we've got our first accordion with our image and our text in there. That's opened up like we specified. Whereas the second two questions are both shut down. So once we click on that, that'll shut the first one up and show us the second one, and the same for the third question. So it's a nice way of laying things out to make them very easy and intuitive. So you've got a long page with lots of information on it. Instead of having a huge page or breaking everything down into multiple pages, you can have one section that just utilizes this kind of layout and makes it nice and easy. So that's our FAQ page set up. We've done that. So let's now move on to working with the blog. So back in the admin for the site, and what we're going to do is we're going to jump over now and create a couple of quick blog posts that we're then going to use as the basis for our blog page. So all I need to do is come over to the post section. We're going to click on add new. And what we're going to do is we're just going to create 2 or 3 new posts, and we'll just call this blog post 1. We'll put some text in there. Now you'll notice that the Visual Composer isn't available to us in the blog section, and that's by default. It only shows up in the actual pages. But you can override that if you go to the Visual Composer settings and come down to General Settings or Role Manager. You can specify what section the Visual Composer is on. You can specify exactly who has access to it, whether it's by default and so on. Again, I've got a video that outlines how this is all done. I'd recommend, if you need to get down to that sort of level of control, check out that video. Links in the description below, and that'll give you a good indication of exactly how to do it. Okay, so we put our blog post text in there, and what we're going to do is we're going to add a new category, and we're going to call this company news. Add that category. That'll be the default category for that. We're going to come down and we're going to set a featured image. So we've got something on there, and we'll set this lovely picture of the lake. So we've got our first blog post. We'll publish that. Then we'll go through and do the same again. So we're going to click add new, and we'll create blog post number 2. This is the second post created. Now, if you look at this layout, you can see there's a lot of different columns down the right hand side, and you may well find there are things in there that you don't really want to use. So you can streamline this interface. If you come to the screen options in the top right hand corner, you can see we've got a whole range of different options that have checkboxes, and they equate to the same things that we're seeing down here: format, categories, and so on. So if there are things in there that you don't want to use, for example, you don't care about the header options, footer options, featured image layout, then you can uncheck those and they will just be hidden from view. So you can see we can do that. We can say tags, I don't want to deal with that. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. Say sidebar, I don't want that on there either. So we've got a much more streamlined layout now, so I can close that down. Now none of those things are taken away, they're just basically disabled visually. So if you want to put them back on, you can just expand that back out, put the checkbox back in there, and then you can see them again. So we've now got a much more streamlined interface that makes more sense to us. So we'll publish that, and now we've got a couple of blog posts ready to go in and start creating our blog section. So there's our blog posts, and you can see they're all listed. It shows the author, the categories they're in, and any tags or comments that may be associated with those. So if we now go over to the actual website itself and we go to the blog section, we can see that the way the things are set out. So you can see that the image is being displayed, there's the blog post information, the read more, we've got a list of options down the right hand side. Now this is the sidebar that's been set up by default, so we may not want to have that as it is there, so we can go in and change that in a moment. And we also change the way that these look based upon the theme that we're working with. So if we don't like this particular layout, we can come back in, we can go to Impressor and theme options, and in there we can go in and tweak the blog layout. So we come down to blog options. You can see by default the blog homepage is set to have a right sidebar. To be layout is classic, and the number of columns. It's going to use a post content of excerpt and regular pagination and so on. So let's just say, well, let's have a different layout on there. Let's choose something along the lines of, let's choose small square image. So we'll save the changes on that. We'll come back into this and refresh it, and we'll find we now have a different layout. So you can see we can easily tweak the layouts on this if we want to. We could come in and say, well, let's have a small circle. Refresh the page, and we now have circular images. Now we might have to rebuild the thumbnails because they've got to be redone when you change the size to sort of go into circles with this particular theme. But you know, you can kind of tweak it to your heart's content to get exactly where you want. I'm going to put that back to small square images, and for continuity I want to make sure that everything is the same. So small square images, and we'll have small square images on there as well. So there's everything set up. I'm happy with that. We'll hit save changes, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go in and change this right hand column. I don't really like the way that's laid out, so we're going to come back in, we're going to go over to appearance, and we're going to choose widgets, and from there we can specify exactly what's in the default sidebar, which is what we're seeing down the right hand side of the blog page. So search is good, recent post is good. I'm not having comments enabled, so I'm going to delete that. I'm going to delete the archives. I'm going to delete meta, and we'll leave categories in there. We'll put categories above recent posts. That kind of makes a bit more sense. When we expand that out, we can say how do we want to display this. So let's just say categories, so people know exactly what they're looking at. Save that. Recent posts, so we'll say recent additions. How many do we want on there? 5's fine, and we'll say we want to display the post date. That's good. And search I think is fine. We'll just say search blog, so it has some relevance. Hit save on there. And if we go back to this now and refresh the page, we'll see that that's now updated and changed the way things are laid out, so it makes a bit more sense. We can click and look at the blog post itself, so you can see we now have a nice layout. So there's our blog section all set up. So all we have left now is the Our Services and the About Us section. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and show you the Our Services, and I'm going to show you quickly how to create a template in there which we can then apply to other pages that have the same basic layout. So we'll apply that then through to the About Us page, and we'll customize that based upon the template that we create in Visual Composer. Okay, so let's go in and edit the Our Services page. All we're going to do is we're going to set this up into a 2-column display, and then we're going to save it out as a template. So first of all, let's switch the back-end editor on. We'll say add an element, and we're going to add a row in, and from that we're simply going to break that into 2 columns. We're going to put a text block in there, We'll hit save changes, that's fine, and we'll put a text block in there. Actually, no, we won't. We'll create a custom menu in a moment, so we'll take a look at doing that. There's something else I want to do on this. I want to have every page to have a contact section at the bottom of it. So we're going to add a new row in, and we're going to say, we're going to have an ordinary row, and we're going to put a text block in there. Take that text out for now and hit save changes. And we're going to create one more block that's going to have a row that's going to be broken into 2 columns. And we're going to put a text, we're going to put a contact form in there. So we're going to say contact form. We're going to specify an email address. So we'll just put, doesn't really matter what I'm going to put in there for now. It's just an email address. And we're going to say, yeah, we want all these. We're not going to worry about the capture field on this example. We'll leave everything as it is. The button will have request information, and we'll have that to be outlined right so it matches up with the contact form with everything else as it is. And then on the right hand side of this, we're going to put a text block in there, and we're going to say request information. And we'll put a message in there that just tells people that if they want more information to please fill out the contact form. We'll just apply a little bit of style into this, and then we're good to go. So we'll set that to be heading 3 is fine, so it'll call some relevance, and we'll save changes on there. Okay, so this is almost completed. We just need to put in some information into this section, but before we do, I want to go in and give this a color. So we're going to specify that this is going to have the primary background color, stretch it to fit the screen, that's fine. Yep, that should be good to go for most of that. And we'll hit save changes on there. And what I'm going to do is put a little bit of a call to action in here, which will be along the lines of just a bit of a message that tells people what to do. Okay, so we'll center that. We'll change this so we've got that set as heading 2 and heading 3, so it has some impact to it. And because that's going to be on a darker background, we're going to highlight that, and we're going to set the font to be white. And we'll hit save changes on that. Now I might need to come back in and tweak this a little bit, but it's a good starting point. We'll hit update on that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at that page, make sure it's the way I want it, and then I can save that as a template if I don't need to make any changes. So let's just switch over to this, and we'll go to our services, and let's take a look at what we have there. Okay, that's looking pretty good. It's looking where I want it to be roughly. So let's just go back and start tweaking this. So I want to put another column in there. So we're going to put another text block in, and we'll save that. Okay, so we've got our basic layout all set up. So the next thing we can do now is save this as a template, and I can use this on any other page that's going to use the same layout format. And then I can just simply come in and tweak the relevant sections to give it the exact information I want on a page-by-page basis. So I don't have to go through the process of doing this all over again. So let's just hit templates. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this one basic 2-column page. Save my template. I can now use that at any point on any other page that I want. So we'll close that down. That's been saved. And now let's just tweak this page to get this exactly as I want it to be. And then we'll go through and apply that template to a different page. So let's just start styling this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and we're going to start adding some text into this. So we'll just come in, edit that. We'll do the same again. We'll put the lorem ipsum text in there because it just fills everything out. And we'll drop a picture in there so we've got something that just looks a little bit prettier. So we'll say add media, and we'll choose this image. We'll insert that. Oh, let me just come back in and do that again. I think I might close that down a bit quick. Make sure everything is set as I want. Yeah, that's fine. Give that a chance to load in. There we go. Save the changes. And I'm not going to worry too much about what's on the right hand side there. That's fine. Like I say, we'll create a custom menu for that in a moment where we can sort of list all the services that we may have on there. So we'll just update this page. And what we'll do is we'll go through and we'll apply this now to the second page. So what we can do is we can come through and go to all pages again. And from there, we're going to come down to the About Us section. Load that page in, switch the back-end editor on, and this time we're going to choose the templates. And as you can see, my basic 2-column template is now available to me, so I can click on that, and that'll load in exactly the layout that we've just created with all the placeholder information in place ready for us to carry on working and speed up the entire process of creating our site. So we'll hit update on there. I can come back in and tweak that page to get it exactly where I want it to be. So we come through and take a look at this page and just refresh it. You can see we now have the page laid out where we want it to be, and we've got a nice rough layout on there. But I kind of think this area at the bottom where we've got the contact form just looks a little bit lackluster. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back into the page. We're going to go back to that relevant section. So we'll go back to the services page. What we're going to do is we're going to put an image in the background. We're going to apply a parallax effect and we're going to apply a color overlay to it just to give it a bit more impact. So let's scroll down to this contact section. We're going to edit the row because obviously the row is where we need to put this information. So let's click to edit the row. From there, we're going to say we want to have a background image in there. So we'll click on that. We'll use this image and we'll click on set image. Now what we can do is I can now configure a few other options on there. Once we've set that up, we can say, how do we want the background image to be sized? Do we want to have it to repeat? And where do we want the image position to be taken from? So much the same as we did with Revolution Slider, we can specify where the focal point of the image is, like center, 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 top, and so on. We can do exactly the same from this. So I'm going to say I don't want to repeat. I'm going to say I want this to be center, center is fine, to be honest, for this example. We're going to have a parallax effect, and we say vertical parallax. And what we're going to do is we're going to apply a background overlay to it. So we're going to click on background color. We're going to set that to be black. And what we're going to do is we're going to come down and we're going to set the alpha to about 80%. So that'll do for me now, and we'll save the changes on that. We'll update the page. And once we've done that, we'll go back over to the site and take a look at what that looks like. So let's go over to the Our Services page. Let's refresh that. And we now have a parallax effect image behind our contact form. Now it's a little bit dark, so I think what I'm going to do is just going to go back in, scroll down the page, click to edit that again, and I'm going to set the opacity of the background just a little lighter. So we'll come down to that, set the alpha, let's just set it to about 65% should do. Let's try that. So save the changes on there, hit update, and then we'll come back, refresh the page and take a look at what that looks like. That's a bit better. So we now have a parallax effect in the background. Problem we have now is this text is too dark. So what we can do is we can come back in, scroll down, edit this text section, simply highlight the text, and we'll just set that to be white. Save the changes on there, update, and then we'll refresh the page and we should find that that now stands out nicely off the background. So there we go. So we've created a nice parallax effect. We've made that section a little bit more interesting, and you can use this effect as many times as you want in its very different sections on the site itself. So there's one final thing I want to do before wrapping this tutorial up, and that is go through and we'll create a custom menu that's going to set on the right hand side of this section. So let's come back in and we're going to go to Appearance, we're going to come down to Menus, and from there we're going to create our custom menu which we can then apply to this section. Right then, for our menu section, we're now going to create a third menu. So we're going to click Create a New Menu, and from there we're going to call this one, doesn't really matter what you call it, just make it something relevant to what the menu is actually about and has a relevance to you. So this is my side services menu, so I'm going to click on Create Menu. Now we don't really have any services pages created, so I'm just going to put in any of the pages. It doesn't really matter. It's more to do with the principle or the process of how you do this than the specifics. So let's just say Our Services, and we'll say Contact and FAQ. It doesn't really matter. We're not going to set this to any of these options because it's not being used for anything other than a specific custom menu in our layout. So we'll hit Add Menu, There's our different sections already added in there. We can reorder those as we see fit. We'll save that menu. So we've now got our custom menu created. We go back over to our pages section, click all pages so we can list all the pages we currently have on the site. And we'll come down to our services page. And once we've done that, we'll go in and we'll customize that right-hand column. So let's just delete this text block out of there. So we just get rid of that, confirm we want to remove it. So with that removed, we can now go in and put what we want in there. So I'm going to come to the top right-hand side. I'm going to type in menu so I can filter out all the different widgets we have. We want WP custom menu, so we can click on that. We can now choose what menu we want to apply. So we say we want to have the side services menu, hit save changes. If we want to put a section title to this, we can easily come in, click, add a text block in there, and we can just put a title in there. So we'll say our services, and we'll save changes on that, and we'll reposition it like we've done before. So we just drag that up, put it at the top. So we now have a new custom menu in the right hand side with a title associated with it. We'll hit update on there. Once we've done that, we'll flip over to the site and take a look at how that looks. So we now have the site with the original position of text on the right hand side. Let's refresh that. And there's our custom menu. So we've now created a custom menu. We need to go back in and resize that because obviously that's not set up. It doesn't look quite right. So we come back in, edit that, and we'll set that to be heading 2. So it has a bit more gravity in there. Update that. Come back over to our test page and refresh. And there we go. So let's refresh that. There we go. That looks a bit better. So there we go. All the skills we've covered in this entire very long video should give you a good understanding of how you can create your WordPress based websites, how you can go from the initial stages of setting everything up on your server, uploading all the files, uploading your theme and your plugins, activating that, and then going through and using Visual Composer, using Slider Revolution 5 to create eye-catching, professional-looking websites. Now, obviously, I've just scratched the surface of what can be done here. It's gone through and given you a brief overview of how you put all these elements together. We could get into a lot more detail, and you really could go to town on how you lay your sites out. But hopefully these fundamental skills will give you a good basis for when you want to start creating your website, to give you the confidence and the skills that you need to work with these various different applications and WordPress to make sure that you end up with a professionally designed looking site. Well, I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please hit the subscribe button. Be kept up to date with all of the content that we add to the site every single week. If you need comments, questions or feedback on this video or anything else covered on the channel, please pop those in the comment section below. And until next time, take care.